Hello, families. I thought I would try something a little bit new and record some of my math lessons so that if you didn't get a chance to see it live for your child on Zoom, you can watch it again. Or maybe if you were doing the lesson and now it's homework time and your child has forgotten what to do, you can rewatch the lesson and see if you can pick up on the information that you were missing. So this week was all about rounding. And for rounding this week, it builds on last week, which was about place value. So last week, you needed to be able to understand the ones place, the tens place, the hundreds place, and the thousands place. So we've moved on to that. We're using those place value tactics to work on rounding today. And for rounding, because it is a difficult subject to teach, I tell a little story with rounding. So if you've heard your child talk about the house number or the neighbor or Lefty the neighbor, that all goes along with the story that I tell about rounding that I'm going to tell you right now. For rounding, there are rules that we have to follow, and your child wrote down the rounding rules on their whiteboard. And I also wrote it on my whiteboard. I took a picture of it and I sent it to you on Remind at the beginning of the week. So if you want to write these down in your house so that you have them available for your child during math, that will be very helpful. Or you can just screenshot this and then you'll have the rules right there. So our rounding rules say if the neighbor is the number 0, 1, 2, 3, or 4, then the house number stays the same. If the neighbor is the number 5, 6, 7, 8, or 9, then the house number goes up by 1. Let's listen to the story and we'll put those rules into action. We're going to be talking about the number 347 right now. And on Tuesday, we started rounding to the nearest tens. So we are going to put the number in the tens place in a house. Some teachers just underline the tens place. I put it in a house. Because the number in the house doesn't know what to do. They always need to ask for help. They always have to go to the neighbors. They're really unsure of themselves. And the neighbor is a rule follower. They always know what to do. So this house number is going to visit the neighbor. And your child has probably done this on their work. Drawn a house and drawn an arrow. So now we're going over to the neighbor's house and we're going to follow our rules. The neighbor is a 7 here in our problem. So if the neighbor is a 7, then the house number goes up by 1. My neighbor is a 7, so I'm going to add 1 to my house number. My 4 now becomes a 5 in the tens place, just because my neighbor told me so. My neighbor was the number 7. Now, after I've talked to the neighbor, the house number, they don't need that neighbor anymore. They've got it. They've followed the rules. So the neighbor now, it doesn't matter. We're going to change it into a 0. We are done with that neighbor. But what about this neighbor on the left? This neighbor we've been calling Lefty. Nobody ever goes over to Lefty's house. We don't talk to them. We don't go into their yard. Not at all. We just let them be. So Lefty always stays the same. 347 has now changed into the number 350. When you're looking at that on a number line, here's 340, here's 350, because we're looking at the tens place, so that's why I made it 10 in between. Halfway between there would be 5, 345, And if I wanted to fill in the little marks in the middle, I could. 341, 42, 43, all the way up to 350. And if I'm following my rounding rules, here's 347. That's what we started with. What is it closer to? Is it closer to 340? Or is it closer to 350? It's closer to 350. So when we're rounding to the tens, we round 347 to the closest 10, which is 350. I tell your children that if your brain works better with a number line, draw a number line and do it that way. If your brain works better with a story and that helps you remember, use the story, draw the house, draw the arrow, and you're following the rounding rules. I hope this helps. Bye.